Read a lot. Don't watch TV. Make business your number one priority and focus. Find good mentors. Network all the time. Never give up.
What is going on, you guys? Welcome to World Class Dropouts. We are so excited to have Matt Morgan here today. Matt, appreciate you joining us, brother.
Of course.
Thank you for spending your time with us. So first and foremost, man, really what our show's about, we just kind of want to connect people with real people who have done it, who have made it. So start a little bit about where you're from. We talked about it a little bit. Tell people where you're from, how you got to this position.
So originally I was born and raised in Missoula, Montana. My grandparents had 5,000 acres out there, so I spent quite a bit of time on their farm. Figured out early in high school that I was a lot different than other kids. Couldn't figure out why. Started my first company when I was 16. Got fired from a lot of jobs along the way. And just kind of became a serial entrepreneur throughout the years. Got involved full-time in cannabis in 2008. Still involved today, 10 years later. Been a ton of ups and downs. And it's been quite the ride. So yeah, here we are in LA now.
Yeah.
A long way from home. And yeah, like I said, it's been quite the journey.
Yeah, so talking to a lot of different people, it's funny because all these people got this profound success, and the underlying commonality between all these people is that people felt different. What was that like growing up and being different from everybody? Because it's a positive thing, but like I've talked to about with a lot of people, it's like it's portrayed as this negative and you're treated like shit. You go through all this hardships for what? But you know what I'm saying? Like what is that like?
So, I mean, it's cool now to look back and think about it, but back then, no, it wasn't cool. It didn't feel cool at the time. You feel kind of like you're an outsider. You feel neglected to a certain extent, and you feel like you're kind of a fuck up to a certain extent, right? Because you can't hold a job. You're not one of the cool kids in school necessarily. Your family wonders what's wrong with you and why you can't be a contributing member to normal society. So when you're young and I would say naive to a certain extent, you do feel it doesn't feel good.
Right.
You know, it feels it does feel like you're kind of on your own island.
Yeah. How do you combat that feeling?
At the time, I didn't know what to do. I was just struggling to keep my head above water and try and figure it out. Right. Nowadays, I combat the feeling by going out and executing on things. So that really calms my anxiety or anything else down. Is just going out and doing it.
Right. So you had this entrepreneurial spirit. Obviously, I'm a big believer. That's kind of something you're born with. Like you're talking about, you kind of were rolling with that at 16. Then you get out. How do you transition from a place like Montana to moving towards a place like LA? Where did that step become?
So there was some break points in between. I got involved in real estate in my early 20s in Montana. So that was kind of my door opener to show me how the world kind of works, dealing with big numbers, large investments by people, understanding psychology, human emotion, stuff like that. So I did that. Got involved in cannabis in Montana, but realized that I hit a ceiling very quickly, so I had to look for a larger pond, if you will. Ended up settling on Scottsdale, Arizona. They had a very favorable cannabis program, so I moved there first, and that kind of gave me my set of training wheels for the big show. So I went from Missoula to Scottsdale, Arizona to Las Vegas, Nevada, and then to LA. So I had a progression of steps that brought me to crazy La La Land.
So obviously networking has been a big part of your career. You're associated with some of the biggest names in branding, and one of those is obviously Dan Bilzerian. Talk to us kind of about how your guys' relationship came about, because obviously there's a lot of things that progress from that. How do you network with these kind of people? Where does those relationships begin?
I think first of all, I'm a very social individual, so networking comes very naturally to me.
Right.
And I've just always networked and try to find, have as many quality people in my network as possible. I think that stems from your upbringing and your core values. And I think Montana played a big factor in that.
Yeah.
you know, you come across much more genuine, in my opinion. You do what you say you're gonna do.
Right.
You don't bullshit people.
Yeah, that's real.
And so, as far as Dan goes, I was living in Vegas. You know, I had the largest dispensary, one of the largest cannabis companies in the country. He was Dan, being Dan in Vegas, and you know, we just crossed paths, and we were two kind of young playboys out there, so we hit it off right away.
That's awesome, bro. So obviously the value in relationships. Let's just touch on, for all the entrepreneurs watching, obviously that's kind of the industry we're in. Where are they going to find value networking? If you had to give them one thing to say, hey, you know, you touched on it a lot, the authenticity, I think that's fucking huge. What would you say the one thing is going to be for most of these people separating themselves, whether they're reaching out over a social brand on Instagram? How can people separate themselves to get in touch with the right people?
You know, I think sometimes it can be very challenging on like a social media platform, just because the people you want to get in touch with are getting inundated with so many requests, right?
Right.
So, I mean, even for myself, it's overwhelming to try and reach out to all these people that, you know, want a mentorship or want help or whatever that may be. And so I think what's been much more effective for me is meeting people, seeing what their network looks like, meeting their friends, becoming friends with those friends, seeing that circle, seeing what friends they have, and just really hand selecting who you choose to spend your time with, because you know, your future is really dictated by the things that you read and the information you absorb, and then, you know, the top 5 people that you spend your time with. So I think you just have to find those top quality type of people. I've had much more success face to face in person than I have online or in social media. It takes a lot more balls to network in person than it does on social media.
True.
So a lot of people really have to step out of their comfort zone, which is also a huge plus in my opinion. So I think that, you know, I think that people should be more into the person-to-person connection. And I think that will get you a lot farther in life versus sending a DM and hoping for a response.
Right. I
mean, you know, if you're reaching out to someone that has a couple million followers, imagine how many messages they get a day.
Right,
So,
yeah.
You know, it can be challenging, but just decide what you want as far as goals, and then work backwards from there, right? So, and then you can create milestones from, if it's a big goal, and you create milestones that help you get to that ultimate goal.
Right.
And then you surround yourself with people that can help you get to that goal, and that you enjoy spending time with.
Yeah, your connections are definitely.
And the other important thing is find quality, good human beings. Don't surround yourself with shitheads.
Yeah, that's true. That is valuable.
For sure.
So 2018, moving into 2019, business is booming. First, I want to touch, before we talk on actually the business side of things, your personal brand, bro. It's blowing up. It's awesome. If you guys don't already have them on Instagram, go find them on Instagram. Talk to us a little bit about the power of a personal brand and kind of how you grew that platform.
So it's funny. You know, I got involved in cannabis early on, but I really didn't want to make it public, just because society viewed it in kind of a negative connotation.
Right.
And so I think when I started Instagram, I had like 300 followers or something. Just my close circle of friends and family.
Right.
And eventually, as my cannabis endeavors got larger and larger, people were like, why aren't you posting about this shit on social media? It's super cool. Like, you know, walking through these NASA looking factories that we built and whatnot. And so finally I was like, all right, you're right. Like, it's time to start like showing the world what we've done. And that's really when my social media and my personal brand took off.
Yeah, when you're pushing that, you know, because world-class dropouts, it's something that comes with social stigmas too, you know, the word dropout. When you're pushing something that maybe doesn't have the best social stigma, how do you push that in a positive light?
You know, I used a lot of humor, and then I used a lot of stories, because the government's propaganda for the last 60 years has completely destroyed cannabis in the public eye. And so I was really fighting an uphill battle, because they've spent how much money on commercials and billboards and everything else.
Right.
So I made it was a mixture of humor as well as mixing in like stories of, you know, helping people, and that this really is, you know, a natural miracle drug. It's, you know, it works. Like, I've watched it work on thousands of people. And so I just used whatever means I could to get the word out there that, hey, this is, you know, this is something real. It's not just for stoners and hippies and you know, tie-dye. There's nothing wrong with tie-dye, but there's a lot more to this plant than that. And it's hard because, you know, even today, like, you can get kicked off social media for talking about cannabis. Google, like, none of the traditional platforms really allow you to advertise for that stuff, so it has been challenging for sure. But I mean, we've come so far in the last 10 years, right? From, you know, my family not talking to me because they thought I was becoming a drug dealer to, you know, me being on the cover of magazines. So it's been crazy.
That's awesome, bro. That's a huge job.
Yeah.
So kind of from rewinding a little bit, obviously the business gets started, you get into the industry. I'm really not sure what took place right in the beginning with business, but in this kind of industry, how do you scale? You know, it's obviously a lot of these entrepreneurs watching, they've got their businesses, they've got their
Right.
brands. How do you scale that shit?
So the way I've done it historically, that's worked very well for me, is I haven't hired a lot of people within the space. I've actually looked at hiring from other industries. I've hired people from Walt Disney, from Coca-Cola, from Microsoft, from a ton of different, different verticals.
Right.
And they've brought their expertise over to the space, and I can train them about cannabis. So that's been very helpful. I instill a very strong culture within my companies.
Yeah.
And if you don't fit that culture, you really don't get hired. And I ask a lot of, I train my HR team to ask a lot of qualifying questions to the people to see if they'll fit the culture or not. Because if you can't fit the culture, you won't make it more than 2 weeks.
Yeah, bro, it's brilliant.
And so if you have the right culture and you have the right leadership from the top down, that's really how you scale, is build a quality executive team, and you can scale from there. My last company, Reef, or one of my last companies, I had 435 employees under management.
Damn, that's huge, bro.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit more about that. I want to dig into that because it's funny. A lot of people we talk to from different athletic programs all the way to the biggest businesses like yours, everybody touches on culture, and it's something that's kind of hard to teach,
Right.
And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, the hardest thing you can do in a company is try to replace yourself. Well, culture is teaching other people to act the way you act, right? And so it's how do you teach that? How do you get people to understand that shit?
Well, it's funny. So actually one of my new companies that I'm launching is called Culture.
There you go.
With a K, so I could trademark it. But with that being said, the way I did it, or I've done it, is I'll sit down with a few key people that I know are going to be top level executives in my company, and then we'll go through an exercise, and if I'm at the top, then I'll let everyone know at the table what's the 3 or 4 or 5 most important things to me when it comes to hiring individuals. And you're talking about core values, you're not talking about skill sets, right? So it's, honesty, integrity, do whatever it takes, stuff like that, hardworking. And so I laid it out on the table, and then everyone else said, all right, that, and I'd like to add this, and then I'd say yay or nay, and we'd come up with what the 4 or 5 most important core values were to that core group of small people that were going to end up running that company. And we hired based upon those core values.
That's powerful. Yeah, really instilling that in the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so smart.
I can teach anyone anything, but you can't teach anyone their core values. That's something that they were born and that they're raised with.
Right. Wow, man, that's powerful. Okay, so now kind of rewinding a little bit, you're talking about kind of the company and what takes place within the company. How do you develop a company when it's taking it from an idea from, you got these great ideas, and a lot of these young entrepreneurs, we talk about like, God, they all got these ideas, but nobody's actually going out and doing it. What would you say to a young entrepreneur, the first steps in taking an idea and transition it into maybe a company, or the beginning steps of a small business?
Right. So I think that going from a vision to an actual execution style of that vision is probably one of the most challenging parts of being an entrepreneur. Because that's really where sitting in a room and coming up with a cool idea is one thing, but actually hitting the pavement and making that a reality is another.
Right.
And most people have to go out of their comfort zone in order to make that vision into a reality. You have to pick up your phone, you have to call people, you have to do things that you're not used to doing. You have to, a lot of times go out on a limb and act like you know what you're talking about. Maybe you don't even know what you're talking about, right?
Right.
So that can be very uncomfortable for people. People don't like to talk about things they don't know about. And so really it's about obviously networking, find the right mentors. They can always, especially if they're a lot older, they can always help point in the right direction. Call this guy, try this, do that. That helped me a lot early on. But the biggest thing for me was when I started my real estate career, it was really a make or break point for me where I really had to make it work. And so I did a lot of knocking on people's doors, cold knocking, cold calling.
Yeah.
And so it made me develop really leather skin. And I literally, have no fear. So I'll call anyone, I'll show up anywhere, I'll go to any meeting, like I don't care.
Right.
And that's the stuff that makes you successful. Like really, it's the uncomfortable stuff that you have to go do that really ends up making you successful. And I think where the gap is most people are not willing to take that next step and pick up the phone and call someone random or go knock on their door. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's not fun. Like
it's not being
no.
said no.
No,
It's not fun, especially
getting endorsed under your
100
face
times.
is not a good time.
Yeah.
But it's just part of growing.
And that's what separates people, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Because most people might talk about it 100 times but won't do it. And so it's the guys that literally don't talk about it and just go do it.
Yeah. So we were talking to Drama the other day, and he was telling us we brought up the fact that this is kind of one of the things we ask people is that our name is obviously World Class Dropouts. and we were talking about kind of the social stigma behind the word. What's your opinion of, just first and foremost, the word dropout? Like, what does that mean to you?
Well, I'm a college dropout.
Yeah.
I went to college for 10 days.
What was that like? All 10 days were dope?
Well, I was sitting in these classes, and obviously I was getting a major in business, emphasizing in finance, because numbers are very important in business.
Right.
If you don't understand your numbers, you're done. I was listening to what these professors were saying, and I'm just like, this isn't adding up. You know, I don't know everything. I don't know much of anything, actually. I'm 18 years old, but this isn't making sense to me. And so I started digging into, you know, who these people were, what they were doing. I'm like, these guys are just entrepreneurs that couldn't make it as entrepreneurs. And now they're teaching all these kids how to be entrepreneurs. So I'm like, I'm out of here.
From not making it.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not listening to people. That'd be like listening to a trainer that's overweight. Like, what? Like, I'm not gonna take one piece of advice from you, right?
Exactly.
Like, come
You're
on,
not even doing
like,
it.
get out of here.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm not gonna listen to someone that's never been successful in business. Like, why would I take a page of someone's playbook when their playbook sucks?
Right.
So after 10 days, I'm like, I'm out of here, and I never came back.
Yeah. That's dope.
So yeah, I'm a dropout.
Okay.
I think dropout can mean a ton of different things, right? But when it's used in a negative connotation in our society because they use it as a thing to instill fear into young people, to make them go to school, to college,
Right.
and to fit into their box.
Right.
I just didn't fit in that box.
Yeah, 100%. So kind of when you leave school, and obviously it's funny because people got this huge misconception, like you're running some of the biggest companies in the world. What do you do for self-education? You know, that's part of the process.
For sure.
Right.
So if you're not going to go to school, you have to learn somewhere,
Right.
right? And I just decided that I was going to learn through real world experience, through super quality mentors, and a ton of reading. So I used to read about a book a week
Okay.
while I was, you know, trying to build these companies.
What's your favorite book?
Think and Grow Rich, probably,
Grow Rich.
or How to Win Friends and
Okay.
Influence
Oh,
People.
yeah,
they're both,
yeah,
they're
everybody
both
knows.
solid. I like older books that will hold their relevancy forever. Right now I'm reading Finish Big, which helps you prepare for big exits out of companies.
Which is brilliant. Talk about that, because I know Tony Robbins touches on that. If you don't got an exit strategy, you don't got a company.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should have your exit strategy laid out when you start the company. At least you should have some sort of high-level thoughts in mind about how you would want to exit, right?
Right.
Whether you're going to go public, whether you're going to get acquired, like, what is your exit strategy? Are you just going to build this thing for the next 1,000 years? You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
So yeah, it's funny, one of the first, like, books of importance that I read was Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within when I was like 12 years old. And that kind of started rewiring my brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is powerful.
So I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan.
Yeah.
Very smart man. But I think that it's huge to make sure that you have an exit strategy in mind when you're building a company, because you really don't know. You know what I mean? Like, that company might not be being worth $10 or it might end up being worth $10 billion. So
Right.
you have no idea. So I don't think enough entrepreneurs prepare themselves for the exit strategy. I think they're so focused on just trying to get the company stood up that they don't ever think about the end game. And I've been a victim to this as well. Of early on, I was young, I was aggressive, I was excited. I just kept climbing very quickly because the space was escalating so quickly. And so I really wasn't thinking about the end result for my, some of my ventures when I should have been. And that's, why I'm educating myself on exits now. In my old age, that's something to think about. So. For sure. So, yeah, man, like I said, to all the young entrepreneurs out there that are thinking about starting a new company, definitely have the exit strategy in mind as well. Who's going to buy you? Make some milestones. What do you want this thing to be worth in 24 months, 36 months, 48 months?
Right.
And how are you going to get there?
Yeah. Okay, so kind of in closing and really wrapping up, kind of the majority is the nice thing about the way we progress through this interview is it's really showing people that it's doable. You're coming out of a situation in Montana.
I'm an average farm kid out of Montana,
Right.
so like the way I say is like, I don't have some special recipe in the back room.
Right.
It's just like, I worked my ass off. I networked like crazy. I was willing to go out of my comfort zone multiple times a day. I found the right mentors that had my interest in mind, and it all worked out. I'm 33. I've been busting my butt as an entrepreneur since I was 20 years old. So it's been an interesting 13-year grind for sure.
Because our friend Casey just put out something that was just, I think, really sums up business, and it's 2% of people are employing the 98% of people that quit.
Right.
And the 2% is just the people that kept going.
And the next no might have been the final final phase before you regress, right?
Right.
And most people, you have to be persistent, and that's one of the most important things. Is like no matter how many people tell you you're crazy, or tell you that it's impossible, or tell you that they can't do it, it's just they might be just 2 days away from being successful. You know, and so many people, they try something, but they don't like things that are challenging or hard. So after at first it sounds like a great idea, like yeah, I'm gonna kill it, I'm gonna crush this, and like 2 weeks later you talk to them like, oh man, this isn't for me, this isn't my thing. So you know, I'm probably just gonna throw in the towel. I'm like, well, you know, that's why you're gonna be an employee for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Like successful entrepreneurs don't ever throw in the towel.
Right.
They pivot, they figure it out. You know, if they drop the ball, they pick up the ball and start running again. Like that's something that I feel also that you're genetically ingrained with.
So to close it out, for our people watching, if you had one piece of advice that you could hand to a young kid, because obviously it's hard to connect with everybody.
Right.
If you could hand this one piece of advice to everybody, what would that piece of advice be?
As far as being a successful entrepreneur?
Yeah, just being an entrepreneur, being somebody on their grind. Maybe they haven't figured it out yet.
Read a lot. Don't watch TV. Make business your number one priority and focus. Find good mentors. Network all the time. Never give up.
Yeah. Well,
So there's like 7 for you.
So if you needed advice,
But they're all equally important.
Yeah.
Like those are all very aggressive contributing factors to my success.
Absolutely.
So I can't leave anyone behind.
Awesome. Well, Matt, appreciate you, brother.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. It was awesome.
Appreciate it. Pleasure meeting you.
From us to you guys, we appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you next time on World Class Dropouts. Peace.